Good evening and welcome to London Live Debate with me, Reya El-Salahi. This is the show that takes a deeper look at the stories making headlines in the capital and the issues at the heart of life in the city. And joining me to pick apart what's in the news this week, a trio of leading Londoners. First up on the panel is Nequela Whittaker, a former gang member who now runs a mentoring scheme for young Londoners trying to escape gang life and has written a book about her experiences growing up on Brixton's streets. Next up is Patrick Sullivan, the founder and leader of the country's youngest-run non-partisan political think tank, Parliament Street. Patrick's a keen Brexiteer and a former senior campaign officer for the Conservative Party. And last, but by no means least, Tunde Okewale, an award-winning barrister whose experience growing up on a Hackney council estate led him to set up Urban Lawyer, a charity which educates young people about their legal rights and supports those from non-traditional backgrounds into the legal profession. Now, tonight's panellists will share their thoughts on the topics making headlines in the capital, and starting with an issue which, in the early hours of this morning, led to a young Londoner becoming the 12th teenager stabbed to death on the city streets this year. It comes in the week Sadiq Khan's called on YouTube and its parent company, Google, to take a tougher stance on videos which he says encourage knife crime. The mayor called on the firms to remove films and prevent them from reappearing. And according to Mr Khan, Scotland Yard has reported 4 violent videos since Christmas, but they're yet to have been taken offline. Let's just take a look at what he's had to say.
Knife crime and gun crime has been increasing across the country for a period now. The police are working incredibly hard. There's a specialist team of 80 officers in London. There's been an increased use of intelligence-led stop and search. We're playing our part. We've invested a record amount in tackling the issue of knife crime, diverting young people away from gangs, making sure that we provide schools with wands so they can detect people carrying knives. All of us have a role to play. And what's disappointing is that YouTube and Google are being told about specific videos being used to incite violence, to encourage others to retaliate or use violence. And rather than YouTube and Google following the advice from the police and taking down these videos, they're still up there. And these 4 particular videos have been viewed now by more than 350,000 times. And it beggars belief that when they're told videos could be inciting violence, they're not taking them down. Today's me making it quite clear to YouTube and Google what my expectations are. What may be innocuous to you and me, a video at a particular park or a particular street, actually is sending a message to a rival gang saying, you know what, one of your gang was stabbed on this street, or one of your gang was murdered on this street. And that's why the police take these videos very seriously. And so my message to YouTube and Google is, if it's the case that these particular videos aren't breaching your guidelines, you've got to toughen up your guidelines. But once the police get in touch with you and tell you there's an issue in relation to videos inciting violence, you should take them down immediately. And if it's the case that YouTube and Google are going to work with us and work with the police to respond in a sensible, responsible manner, we'll have to consider lobbying the government about changing the law. So let's hope that YouTube and Google see sense. We'll work closely with them on a whole host of issues, from tackling online hate crime, from working with them to stop radicalisers using the internet to turn young people into extremists. And similarly, I'm hoping YouTube and Google will take a sensible approach to work with us to make sure these videos which incite violence are no longer on the social media.
Mayor Sadiq Khan speaking there. Now, Patrick, one of our panellists this evening, you set up an organisation, a think tank, which aims to connect young people with the workings of the likes of Sadiq Khan and politicians like him. Do you think he's onto something here, that we need to engage with social media sites more on a policy level?
Absolutely. I mean, we're in a brave new world now. I mean, most of these companies didn't exist 20 years ago. But they have responsibility for the content that is on their platforms. This is not about freedom of speech. YouTube is a platform that is owned by a company, and that company is Google. Google is responsible for the content that it allows on its sites. Now, earlier on in this year, 250 companies suspended their advertising with YouTube because their adverts were going on videos that promoted hate crimes and other things. Part of that, those 250 companies, were the Cabinet Office. I think Sadiq Khan and mayors like Andy Burnham should team up and say that none of their advertising budgets will go on YouTube, will go to Google, while they allow these despicable things to be on their platforms.
Tunde, is there an issue, however, with free speech, that if people want to put videos up on YouTube, surely they should be allowed to?
I think that's one of the issues. One of the issues is finding that balance between freedom of speech and potentially committing a criminal offence by inciting a particular crime. There's another issue with social media generally anyway, in that there's a co-authorship, in the sense that even if YouTube and Google were to remove the videos, because of the nature of the platforms, people upload them again, or different people are uploading them. So there's an issue in terms of monitoring the content and who in essence is going to police and enforce them, and then ensuring also from a policy point of view, how do they identify if a particular piece of content, you know, specifically is inciting crime? Because sometimes people speak in code and slang. I think that what the mayor's trying to do is very good, but I see it being very difficult unless it becomes very specific, because without that guidelines, it'll be very difficult for the platforms to just be taking videos down ad hoc.
I can see Nequela nodding your head along there. Do you think it's unrealistic to think that stopping YouTube videos is actually going to make any difference to knife crime in London?
I think at the moment it's not going to stop or help prevent the problem or the issue at hand. In light of it kind of bringing awareness to there is a problem and there is an issue, that this platform is being used to glamorise that kind of knife and gang culture, which a lot of young people are being drawn to. YouTube is it's a very big platform at the moment, and a lot of our young people use YouTube. So in light of what they see on YouTube, I do believe it should be filtered a lot more than what they're able to access, because it's easily accessible for anyone to put up any type of videos which kind of sell as a negative image. And the young people at the moment are being drawn to this kind of negative image and YouTube, because it's so easy to upload and kind of get that 10, 20 minutes of fame. And I feel that the platform needs to be monitored a lot more. So I am behind Sadiq Khan, but I don't think it's going to be as easy as he thinks it could be.
Yeah, I mean, speaking today, moving this story along a little, the Metropolitan Police Chief, Cressida Dick, has defended the use of stop and search in tackling the rise in knife crime. She's also spoken about fighting the perception that it's disproportionately used against Black and Asian communities, saying, in London, about 1 in 3 stop and searches result in something being found. That shows we're not just doing random work. She goes on to say the perception might be that we stop lots of, for example, young Black men and we don't find anything. We do, I'm sorry to say, we find the same rate among people of colour and the people not of colour that we stop. This is not disproportionate and shows fairness in terms of our activity. Tunde, the organisation you set up works with teaching young people about their rights. What do you make of that idea of stop and search?
Just firstly, dealing with the quote, I'm not sure if it accurately characterises what she said, but I think there's a lacuna in her logic. If you're disproportionately stopping a specific group, then it'd be very difficult for you to say that what you find is the same in relation to other groups, because you're not stopping the same amount of people. So I think that we need to be very careful about reliance that's placed on certain numbers. It's a fact that Black men are disproportionately stopped and searched. And that's a wider issue, because it's not only the issue of stop and search, it's also the treatment that young Black males have in the criminal justice system generally. I think that stop and search as a method of detecting crime is fine, but it's the way that it's applied that's the issue. Generally, the public has no issue in relation to stop and search because it keeps the streets safe, but there needs to be fairness in terms of how it's applied. It's not only young Black males that carry knives.
Patrick, in your former life, you were a Conservative campaigns officer, a senior campaigns officer. Yeah. Do you think the government's doing enough on this issue? Could more be done?
Well, I mean, Theresa May was very important in sort of changing the rules regarding stop and search. I think that the government could be doing more. People don't feel safe in the streets anymore, and we've seen a rise in gun crime and in knife crime this year, and the same is true of other major cities which have stopped stop and search. Bill de Blasio won with a landslide in New York, stopped stop and search, and then crime went up. I mean, those sort of things speak for themselves, really.
Nequela, do you think that stop and search has too much of a disproportionate impact on certain communities, particularly where it comes to relationships between, for example, Black communities and the police? Is there a sense that it's too dangerous to use?
I think it's the emphasis on the Black community is heavily pressured around our young Black males being stopped and searched. What I do believe about it is before the stop and search, there should be a process. And what is the process before that, before they target such a community? Because it is the areas or I shouldn't say they target the communities, instead the areas they target, and within them areas, what is the minority? Young black males. So I think that it could be more, the strategy needs to be readdressed and kind of make it more widespread, because there's young people who are from the same communities, but they don't get the same treatment as the young black males. So it's something that needs to be looked upon, and before stop and search, what is being done in light of preventing us having this epidemic of stop and search being brought back up again, because it made a lot of people feel uncomfortable in 2007, 2008, because it was emphasised only on a certain community. So it's just widening it out and kind of making it fair to all.
We're going to talk a lot more about this and other stories making the news in just a moment, but we are heading for a short break now. Still to come between now and 7:30. A suspected acid attack outside Kensington Palace. Does the latest in the recent spate of incidents affect how safe you feel on London streets? Join us again in a few minutes. Welcome back to London Live Debate. I'm Reya El-Salahi, and joining me to take a closer look at what's in the news this week, ex-gang member turned mentor and author Nequela Whittaker, the CEO of think tank Parliament Street, Patrick Sullivan, and the barrister and brains behind charity urban lawyer Tunde Okewale. Right, let's delve straight back into the stories making headlines now. And a teenager has been taken to hospital after a suspected acid attack outside Kensington Palace this morning. The 17-year-old cyclist was sprayed in the face with an unknown substance. Now, it comes after shop owners in Hackney have become some of the first in the UK to stop selling bleach and other corrosive domestic products to anyone aged under 21. Traders have agreed to put posters in windows amid claims the government isn't acting fast enough, while former gang member Gwenton Slowly is now an advisor to the police, and he's been explaining why he welcomes the move.
I think it's really good to see Hackney taking a stance first and foremost, because this is really horrific, the acid attacks that's happening on the general public. So it's really good. I've been in conversations with the Mayor of Hackney over the past couple of weeks over different things, and he also supports the stance that Hackney's taking on this acid attack epidemic. It's good to see that the shopkeepers have come on board and also supporting the movement to say, look, no longer will we be suffering in silence. We'll all come together as one community as we are in Hackney and stamp out the nonsense that's been going on for far too long now. And we also have to make the general public aware that there's two types of acid. We've got the acid that will burn through a plastic bottle, and then we've got the more common acid that we're seeing now where people are concocting other ingredients together. That's making a different acid that could be held in a plastic bottle and go undetected in a stop and search when the police are doing their regular checks in the community.
So Hackney shopkeepers leading the way in the country, and Tunde, part of the capital that's your hometown originally. What do you make of this? Do you think it's the right reaction from shop owners?
Yeah, it's the right reaction, and in fact it's actually moving in line with the approach that was taken with respect to knives. So prohibiting the access of it to young people, and by setting an age requirement. I think the next thing that needs to be done is there needs to be a change in the law, because currently as it stands, you can buy corrosive substances and walk around, and it needs to be proven that you have an intent to cause harm with it. Whereas with respect to knives, the test is slightly different.
Nequela, how much, if at all, are you seeing this sort of thing reflected in the young people that you're working with now?
The behaviours of this kind of, the traits and behaviours, it's becoming more apparent within young people. It's a stance that I feel like it's asset-based community development, and I feel that the community needs to be a bit more accountable for the young people, because it is becoming more apparent within their behaviours at the moment.
What, blaming parents?
Not blaming parents, but taking responsibility, and a lot of parents and outside support are not taking responsibility for the actions of the young people. We all come from a set community, so we all should be accountable for the young people's actions and be able to steer and guide them in the right direction.
Patrick, do you feel safe on London streets when you hear stories like this?
I don't. I recently had somebody try and steal my phone, one of these moped youths, so that didn't make me feel safe at all. And I think the general sort of feelings amongst friends of mine, young people that I know, is that we're not as safe as we used to be. London, I think, used to be one of the safest cities in the world. I'm not using any graphs or any sort of empirical data to say this. I'm just saying, as a matter of heart, not head, people don't feel safe.
Tunde, young people that you work with, you yourself, do you feel safe in London?
I feel safe in London, but that's probably not important. The young people that I work with and come into contact with don't. I think that the paradigm in reality depends on your certain circumstances. It's very context-based, where you live and what you're involved in. And certainly, one of the causes in respect of knife crime was the fact that young people didn't feel safe, so decided to arm themselves with knives in order to protect themselves and feel safe, which then created a spiral and a culture of young people carrying knives. And unfortunately, when you carry a knife, you use it. It seems that that's the same thing that's happening with acid, where people are not feeling safe, and as a way of, feeling safe, fall into a misguided sense that they need to arm themselves to protect themselves. But unfortunately, it just further perpetuates the violence.
It's a vicious cycle, isn't it?
Unfortunately.
Do you feel safe, Nequela, walking around London streets knowing these sorts of things are happening?
I'm starting to feel a little bit unsafe in some areas because you're not really aware of the demographic and where's safe to go when you start to do some of the work in areas outside of South London. But I think the general consensus is you can be scared anywhere you go. So it's just about being a bit more aware and vigilant about the stuff that is happening in the community. It's gone from knife crime to acid attacks to gun crime. So it's just having that broadened knowledge about these things are on the rise, and just to be aware of it, to be honest with you.
So it is just part and parcel of life in the city?
Yeah, that's how I feel, to be honest. I'm not thrown off by the work that I do yet, but it is elements of having to have that extra awareness about this acid attacks and kind of familiarising myself with it as well.
I just want to bring in something, actually. It's interesting you talk about that. Today, a video released by the police has seen a jogger, by the looks of it, pushing someone into the path, narrowly avoiding the path of a bus. An example of microaggression, perhaps, in the capital. You can see this footage now, the jogger running along in South London, and absolute act of God, some might say, that she wasn't really badly hurt when she was pushed there. But I just wanted to bring up this issue of microaggression in London, that this has led some people to say that they don't feel safe in London. There is a sense of simmering hostility in the capital. What do you make of that, Tunde?
Again, I think it's relative. It depends on who you are. I think that there are people that are unpleasant, but there are unpleasant people all over the world.
So it's not a London issue?
I don't necessarily think that it's specific to London. I think London has its own issues, and that may just be a manifestation of something else. We don't actually know what the cause or the trigger was for that behaviour. Certainly, post-Brexit, there was a lot of feeling that people didn't belong, and that there was a lot of anger and resentment towards them. Fair enough, but just in terms of general aggression and anger, people express their emotions contingent upon things that they're experiencing. And I don't think that's something that's specific to London. I think it's just general human nature.
Patrick, you mentioned that you almost had your phone stolen, or you had your phone stolen.
Almost.
Recently.
They didn't get it.
Was it the first time something like that's happened to you?
Yes, it was the first time something like that's ever happened. I mean, beforehand, I just sort of felt that I could walk around anywhere and I was sort of safe, almost a sort of sense of invulnerability. We sort of lived in a world where crime was sort of falling year upon year, where cities are becoming safer and safer, and it seems that we're going backwards, not forwards now.
What part of London was it, if you don't mind me asking?
Clerkenwell.
Okay. That's surprising.
Yeah.
Did you call the police? Did you do anything about it?
No, I didn't. I just sort of, my phone was smashed, so I had to get a new phone, but I was just shaken up more than anything else.
Well, glad that you're safe. But Tunde, you say it's surprising. Why is it surprising? You say we've been hearing this is part and parcel of life in London. Why does it surprise you?
I don't know. Maybe it's because it's something that I haven't actually experienced. I've not experienced it. I don't try to snatch my phone, fortunately. And the area in which the incident occurred isn't an area that one would associate with that type of criminality in any event. So customarily, when people speak about incidents like this happening, they wouldn't necessarily speak about Clerkenwell. So that's why it surprised me.
So had Patrick said it happened, I don't know, somewhere in Brixton where Nequela grew up, or in Hackney where you grew up, you wouldn't be so surprised?
Brixton and Hackney are very different. Had you said Brixton 10 years ago, maybe not. If you said Hackney 10 years ago, maybe not. But Hackney and Brixton are very similar to Clerkenwell now. So I probably wouldn't have. And that's the reason why I said in terms of, my feeling about London. London's changed. It's very different to the London that I grew up in. So certainly my experience is very different.
I have a different view on that. I feel that is where you said clock is very common for those kind of things to occur, because these young people now, they're targeting the rich people. You're not going to have that in Brixton, because you're going to get an iPhone, an iPhone 4 possibly. So they're going to go out their ways in areas where they know that it's easy to target. And
based on that, just out of curiosity, what phone did you have?
iPhone 5.
Well, so it's more than a 4.
Well, you're getting a lot of these.
It's not 6.
It's not, but the expectation and the stereotype is the people further out have got more money. They've got their loss is easier than anybody else's gain. So that's the mentality that's been manifested. It's not really a big blow to your pocket. You're going to go and fix it, get a new one. Somebody who's coming from a disadvantaged background, taking something from them, it's not really worth it to a thief.
The reason why I don't necessarily agree with that is that if you look at the crime that's actually happening on the streets to our young people, it's against other young people from the same areas, as opposed to going further out. So it's not an isolated incident to only taking from people that may have more than them. People are robbing people that live in the same communities as them.
I'm afraid to say we are running out of time, but it's been great to have you on the show. Thank you so much for joining us. Afraid we are out of time, but thank you very much for joining us and for watching at home.